And I think at that point is when I started investigating more into saying, why did I not feel this before? Why did I not see it as an issue? Because you give me, thankfully, unlikely, give me a paper to read, I will read it. But obviously, I had the same issues of having to read it more times because I would get deviated into parallel thoughts. I think over time I'd learned to deal with it automatically. I just made ways to read things, and I would also see days where it would be difficult to crack lines and sentences following up.
Welcome to the debut episode of The Invisible Silence, where we explore the untold stories, hidden struggles, and powerful triumphs of athletes beyond the scoreboard. You like that one, Lee? Now, this series focuses primarily on neurodiversity in sports. So from ADHD to autism, dyslexia to sensory processing differences, many athletes navigate challenges that go unnoticed, yet these very differences can also be their greatest strengths. Now, I'm Stel. My co-host, or should I say the head honcho, the brains of this series, Lee Taylor. How you doing, my friend?
How are you, sir? Uncle Stel, lovely to be finally, after all these months of talking about this and the years of thinking about it, we're here, and we've got the best first guest that I could ever want for, really. We're going international. This is a multi-sport, neurodiverse, diverse, whatever you want to call it, because that's what's me. And we're just getting all the professional athletes around the world that I've met, that I've played against, that I've had a conversation with before, about their journey being neurodiverse. So so I'm over the moon, really. I'm me. Everyone knows me. I've been in professional football 32 years, as well as other sports, from rugby to Olympic Games, ice hockey, all sorts, dancing. So I'm a high performance coach, sports scientist, therapist, and my work's took me abroad for all my career, from the Premier League to the Indian Super League, where mine and Stel's guest, Abs, is joining us today. So it's about neurodiversity. It's about finding out how we've navigated our careers. Mine at school, I left school with no qualifications at all. I hid behind sport. When I was at school, it was just classed as thick, but I didn't want to be called thick, so I just hid behind sport and played a lot of sport, and done okay, and found my pasture when I left school, through the Football Association and the PFA, and that's when I started, really. So this is a big subject. It's a subject that's not talked about. It's kind of like the elephant in the room. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I'll speak to Stel and see if we can do something like this. And he went, this is unbelievable. Let's do this, and we can reach out and we can kind of empathise with people out there. It's not just sporting people. It's everyone. There's everyone. My dad's a professional footballer, England international, West Ham legend, and there's no bones about it. I'll say it. He's neurodiverse. I'm neurodiverse. And there's other people in my family that are neurodiverse, but it hasn't stopped us doing what we do, because we learn differently, and that's what we're going to talk about, and we're going to see what how people learn, and just try and help people out there if they want to come on and talk to us about their journey. It's, at the end of the day, I'm not an academic. I don't profound to be an academic, but I'm very good at what I do, and I work with the best athletes in the world, but I just learn differently, and I want to share this and make the coaches, the operators, the managers, of every sport and every other fraternity understand how people like I think and how I learn. Because when we was back at school, we were thick. That was it. If we read something, I could read it 20 times. Still, you'd scan it in 10 seconds and go, boom. But that's the way you learn.
I didn't like school. I didn't pay attention.
There you go.
This is why I'm doing podcasts.
But what I'm saying is, people are scared to say. I will say, I look at something now. I've got better, and I look at something now, and I might have to read it 15 times instead of 25. But then if someone else reads it, they scan it straight away, and I think, well, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Why isn't that going in? And then I go, and then I waited for someone to say something, and then as soon as I heard someone say something, I understood it straight away, because it was a voice, or if there was a video, I'll watch this video. Tell me, I'll tell you what was good about that. You remember you used to get in the papers, spot the difference, I used to love them. I used to be the best at them because it was visual, anything audio and visual. So kind of in a terms of just starting tonight, so we kind of understand with our viewers that it's not like question time, but we are professional people that have been at the pinnacle of our fields all our career, and it's time to let people talk. Really, time to get people talking about it. So I'll take you over to you, Abs. Welcome from me and Stel. The inaugural, is that the right, Stel? Inaugural?
Yeah.
The inaugural, and this is going to go worldwide, and we're going to have boxers on. We're going to have everything on here. And you're the first person that I said to Stel, the first person that I want to bring on here, because I never knew until we did that pod the other day that you were neurodiverse, and you didn't know I was neurodiverse, but I took the plunge and you texted me straight away, and I thought, oh man, over to you. Tell us about you.
Thank you, guys. It's an honor and a pleasure, mainly not just to be in the same platform as you guys, because you guys have done so much in your own fields, but it's also for being in the first podcast as well, the inaugural podcast, as you guys are saying. It's really an honor. So a little bit of who I am or what I've done. Definitely not much is healthy from a Premier League perspective and things like that, but I think I was always that athlete who probably had all the attributes to be playing international, but never got there. I was always I belonged to that group of athletes who had all the physicalities and the mentality needed for performance, but didn't really get there because maybe there wasn't enough guidance of that was needed, which then later on led to what I started doing as a strength and conditioning coach and a rehabilitation expert. But it all started with the journey of playing cricket. And as you know, I'm Indian, and everybody and everyone in India plays cricket, and it's our premier sport. But my journey generally started off as being a good athlete. I was really a 400 meters runner, and I always loved football. But the kind of schools that I went to, and the part of town where I grew up, it wasn't the same scenario as what a lot of you might have been used to. I went to a school which had an L-shaped, maybe a 40 by 50 meter ground, and we played all our sport there, But it was a great school in terms of education, and that's normally the priority, especially from someone. I'm 40 now, and from my backgrounds in Bangalore, where I come from in India. The main focus always is, is it good in education? And that's after that, everything else falls in place. And normally the emphasis has never been about sport. And it's not part of our culture as it is in many other places. So, and so you always had to swim against the tide there. I would always want to be playing. But then you must also have the facility to do so. But we did everything that we wanted. Playing on the very popular thing to do is play street cricket, and you hone your skills, which I feel now nowadays the international athletes or the younger kids coming through don't get that opportunity to do that. That's why they're not street smart. When they get into tough scenarios, they don't know how to deal with it because they never did the things that we did. The things that we learn on the street, that's almost they play recreationally, but it's not the start for most athletes. But if you take people from my time, we all played street cricket, and it was a huge foundation to what we did. And for what I started doing later on was I was probably when I was 15, 16, I was like I said, everybody played cricket. So I realized playing on the street that I was better than at least the kids there in that pool. But I also played a lot of tennis ball cricket, which is a very different thing to the hard ball cricket because you have to bowl much quicker. You need to rotate your arm a lot faster. So you have to create a lot more speed for you to go through. So when for the first time, I think I was in 8th or 9th grade when I got to play with a hard ball for the first time, because to play with a hard ball in the street conditions, you'll probably break things. So you needed all the nets and all of these things around for that to happen. So when they did give it to me, and when I did bowl for the first few times, everyone was like, "Oh my God, it's really quick." And so I thought, okay, it's just around these areas. These kids haven't seen more. That's why they think I'm quick. But then it just happened to be that I was quick enough. I was quick, and it was a time also when the national team didn't have many outright quick bowlers like they do now. And it's not that it's now that people are getting to it. It's just that now there are many levels that people have options to play, and it's also being telecasted, so they're getting shown. We always had people like me around, but that's kind of where the journey of playing cricket happened. I literally went from playing on the street to making the camp for the India under-19 side in space of 3 months, and that's generally how cricketers are done in India. At least in my time, at least now we got the IPL, which is our really
which you was involved with. Interrupting, yeah, that's what you was involved with as well, because you're too humble. He jumps between football, IPL. He's all over the place.
Multi-skilled, mate. Multi-skilled.
He's not. Tell everyone the sort of players that you play with. Like these.
I'll get. The thing is, it was again, it was lucky to be having that opportunity in that journey. Again, making the camp. I started the conversation. I was always the one who was almost there. I was the almost professional athlete, but never. Obviously, I got to play professional cricket, but not at the highest levels as I think I should have, especially when I started in the later part of my life investigating. That was part of my journey, was to investigate why I didn't make it, because I think I had all the attributes for it. And first part of my life was just studying, trying to understand that. Had a lot of major injuries, which also kind of highlighted the need to get better sports science in, and it wasn't available. And it was what was driving me to kind of get. And only way I actually fixed it was by studying through it. And I had some few people who helped me through it. But yeah, like you said, because I was always in the fringes, you get to play with all the major players who you see on screen as well, because it is the level below that. But I had and I think the person he's pointing the most was the guy who was one of the owners of the football club later on, which was Mahendra Singh Dhoni, who is the Indian team captain. Obviously, I can't put my hand out saying I played year in and year out. No, but I was a kid. I was I think it was 2021 when he was just making it up there. And I think he was playing for the India A side at that point. And I remember playing against him. What was funny was when we had a dinner when we were working with the football club, and we had a dinner with him, and I was sitting with him, and I said, "Oh, do you remember?" He actually remembered the game because I didn't get him out, but I probably had the best bowling figures in that game. But that's what's about a great thing about him. He was always a really humble guy, and he was the captain of the Indian team. And I always tell people, being the captain of the Indian team must be the best gambler in the whole planet. So, because the number of things you got to juggle with, the number of people you got to keep happy for the period of time he did, and at the cool nature that he did it in, it was quite
It was cool, wasn't it?
impressive. And when you
Cool.
speak with him, even now, you could probably walk up to him and he'll have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
As long as you have something interesting, he will have a conversation with you. That's who he is.
Yeah.
But I've had the privilege of playing with almost all of them who's played for the Indian team even now. One of those guys is probably KL Rahul, who's been the one of the main batsmen for India for now. So much so that he's also someone who's close to the family, because we both come from the same town as well. So his family and my family are also close. I've known him from the time he's about 15, 16. It's a superstar now. But I would say it's also because I come from a county, which you guys call county here, but we call it state in India, which produce a lot of elite cricketers. Like, I spent a lot of my young age running and bowling to Rahul Dravid, who is the main head coach recently, who won most things, but he was our absolute most celebrated cricketer as well with the Indian team, along with Sachin Tendulkar, who's like the god of cricket for us. But below him, it's always Rahul Dravid, who I spent many hours in the gym because I was always injured and doing my rehab. And he would look at me and say, "When am I going to see you outside?" He would always look at me and say that to me. But I think it was once a journey where I think we did a lot of things that Australians did, because cricket's always been, especially Indian cricket's always been connected to Australian cricket, because there was a lot of sports science professionals from there working in us. And I also had, because we were such a premier county, we also had a high performance center for the BCCI, which is called the National Cricket Academy, which is in Bangalore itself. So I got to use those facilities as well, which meant there were also these professionals hanging around. And I think Paul Close and Paul Chapman, who are two of the physios and strength and conditioning coach from, I think, New South Wales now, but I think Paul Chapman was the strength and conditioning coach of Mumbai Indians, and I think he still is. And he was quite influential in my early years, because he saw me and he saw that I had the drive to learn, and you see me fix myself all the time. But then he thought of stepping in and saying, "You know what, this is what's going on with you," and actually gave me a little bit of insight of saying what strength and conditioning could do for you. Because we always had all of those elements, but it was run by gym trainers. So, and the gym trainers were normally bodybuilders who then probably did certifications when got in there, but that's all was around there at those days, So, but it was not good enough to understand my body and understand saying, does a simple question, would a squat be good for you or not?
Yeah.
Clearly, yeah.
So tell us, when was the? I mean, I was 28. Yeah. I was 28. I didn't know what was going on. I just thought, well, it was just normal that I
must have been a long time ago then.
Yeah, well, steady, son. Steady. I've just sprayed my hair up. Yeah. I got told when I was 28 that someone come up to me and they went. It was a trainer come up to me and went, LT said, have you ever thought about going to see this occupational therapist? Said, I think they might just go and have a little test because I think you'd benefit from it. And then I thought, what's he saying that for? I thought, I'm good as gold. You know what I mean? I learn how I learn, and I'll just get through it, and I'm doing all right, But I went there and it opened my eyes up, and I couldn't believe what was going on, but it was still taboo. Still didn't tell no one. Yeah, that's when I found out. When did you kind of realise that not there's something wrong with you, but something that weren't right? When was it? When was it yours? Because from when I was 28 going forward, I've never looked back, and I know how to learn the way I learn now. I'm never going to be a Stephen Hawkins or someone who's unbelievably academic and unbelievable, but I've got that happy medium now of learning, and I can deliver. I coach, it's no problem. But I've got kind of like a structure now where I know where I am and how I can do things if I'm under pressure. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's why I was nodding when you were giving your intro as well. A lot of those scenarios seem familiar when we were growing up, especially. And like I said, it's so academic especially for an Indian kid growing up. It's always about studies, and so what they termed it as was, oh, he can't have attention. He loses attention.
Yeah.
But the funny thing was, every time there was any science-related things, I would do really well. Anything that was boring, I would not.
Yeah.
Because it was just logical for me, it was just about logic for me, and it was easy for me to and I would just, and so I wouldn't want to sit in the classroom, because when someone's talking to me, I would be all over the place. I would be like, oh, okay, but I would be picking up gist. So I started realizing if I had like a time off to just sit down and read, I would. But I never realized or didn't know anything about this until I was 35, when I was, and that was very, very far down. And it's interesting, because I was actually talking to a psychologist about this journey, what I'm doing now, which is trying to do a PhD. And just like you, we just studied our way, and I did a few certifications, which is what started me off at an undergrad in biotechnology. But I was playing cricket full time, so it just meant the way sports scholarships are given up in India is that they're given. It's not like there's a scholarship. It's just they give you an exam whenever you're free. That's their support that you get as a sports scholarship in those days. And that's what happened. I was playing cricket full time, didn't really have much time. So I was still not very exposed in even undergraduation, where I did biotechnology, which I had molecular biology. I wasn't exposed of all the problems that I really, really had in me. And when I was talking to a psychologist, and she was like, have you ever been tested for ADHD? She mentioned, that was the first time she even mentioned the words to me, and I was like, heard it a lot. I know that a lot. I know a lot about it. Didn't really think, but she was like, you're talking to me just now, and you switched to from the last. She spoke to me. Must have been about maybe 10, 15 sessions. She knew me enough, and I was comfortable talking to her about it. But she kept telling me every single time we talk, you speak about at least 10 different things.
That's
you're able to manage it.
Still, that's me. I go for one thing, and then he says
you're able to manage it.
He said you spoke 15 different things.
He said you're able to manage it and connect the dots. But if I had to make you write this, you know how much of a struggle that would be for you. And I was like, is that?
You had to get your hours worth, though. You had to get your hours worth. You're paying by. You're being charged by the hour. Why not?
Yeah, but thankfully back home it's not as costly as everywhere else. So manageable cost, I should say. But I had like a really, really good psychologist. I really, even till date, I keep in touch with her. She's been helping me through other things. But she said that to me, and at that point I was like, but wait, is this only something that you see in me? Is this not someone who has a lot of ideas, or is this not? It's just not someone who's just enthusiastic. Is what I asked. She said no. Have you heard of this ever before? She said no, but this is what they should say in school. They should call my parents over. My mom would go over for the PTAs, and she would be like, "Oh, your son doesn't concentration class," and I'm like, and so you need to get him to come for like summer schools or like other things to make up for those and I also, because I was playing sport, I would run away for events, and I would warningly miss tests because of it, and I would write only my final examinations every year and pass, and I would just get through. And so they would constantly ask those. So I went back. So she said, there's a questionnaire for you, and there's a questionnaire for your mom to fill in. I was like, oh, my mom's not going to listen to this really well, because an Indian mom, and my mom's really open about a lot of things, and my parents have been really open-minded. They're not like other, very, very strict parents from India, but I knew that would be still a burden, because just to hear that her son might have a mental thing, it would be something hard on her. So I had to explain it to her and say why, but I also had to mask some of it, saying, oh, we're just doing an assessment of different things so I can figure out what my interest is. But I had to still skirt around the issue, but I'm pretty sure she figured it out. But got her to do it. And it was shocking for me when she came back with the number of things that she answered in it, which was classical cases of ADHD right there. And so it's like, wow, this is interesting. So what happens? What happens to normal people? Is what my question was. And she was kind enough to explain it to me. But then I was all this conversation was happening because I was trying to go back to doing some academic work, and she was trying to set me up, saying there will be challenges, so you start understanding what that challenges is, and try and find different ways. I'm sure the universities have steps for you to deal with it, but still I feel you're someone who'll find an answer because you are that kind of a person. You find solutions to these things. And I think at that point is when I started investigating more into saying, why did I not feel this before? Why did I not see it as an issue? Because you give me, thankfully, unlikely, give me a paper to read, I will read it. But obviously, I had the same issues of having to read it more times because I would get deviated into parallel thoughts. But I think over time I'd learned to deal with it automatically. I just made ways to read things, and I would also see days where it would be difficult to crack lines and sentences following up. I would lose track of those things as well. So I used apps which would help highlight things and keep my focus within. And there are many things out there now that we can use for that purpose, and I think I use them quite a bit. But I think I started investigating as I am about everything. I kind of started digging deep, saying, why did it not show up more before? I have done.
Ash, sorry to interrupt. Do you think it's because you are an elite sportsman and you're too busy focused on your career, whether it be training, your diet, or your day-to-day routine, and then you're playing in front of thousands of people? I mean, you come from probably the biggest nation in terms of population. I think India takes up 17% of the world. I think it's 1.4 billion people there. So being under that spotlight, perhaps that kind of deviated your thoughts to the professional side rather than the person. I'm just guessing here.
Yeah. So I that's the same thing I did. I kind of look back, but I also feel, this is something I sent Lee as well about, saying I think a lot of them, and I picked up what Lee said last time. What LT said last time was a lot of them also might hide behind these things. A lot of them nowadays keep hiding behind these things. But I've always looked at it as a skill set that my brain has now learned to adapt and live with. But it's also a high efficiency brain. It can perform if you know how to use it really well. And I think we need to develop those tools to put it to use, because in the same scenario where you said there might be a crowd, there might be, what would happen to me at high pressure situations is that I would become hyper focused. Everything would become and it happens even now. If there's a deadline, I would have sat down till the deadlines for next day morning, but I can crunch it out for 2 days in a row and finish it. But I need to get into that state where, oh my God, I got to put it in. I can switch on to that hyper focused state. And I love that state because everything gets done in that state. But the other times, when I can see other people so easily can just structure these things and just check things off, it doesn't really work the same way for me. And I also questioned how much of sport itself, because it requires so many fast decision making scenarios, this hyper efficient brain or hyper functioning brain is kind of adapted to those. Because and the reason I came up to it is I actually went on medication for this scenario, and I was prescribed stimulants, which was, I was on the fence with that, but I also wanted to kind of say, okay, I'm going to trust what you guys are saying. Let me do it, because I knew they were not coming from a sport front. Because I still play a lot of football. I still play. I've started playing cricket again after 15 years, but I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, saying they've made all the decisions on considering all the activities that I say that I do. And funnily, when I started taking it from an education standpoint, it actually gave me one day of saying, oh, this is how others feel. It was calm, and it's like, wow.
But you didn't sleep, did you? You didn't sleep, did you?
It did affect that. But when I went out to play, because the half-life of that drug is about 8 hours. So one of those days I went to play footy, and it was still about 3 or 4 hours since I'd taken it. And that was the slowest reactions I had. And I was at that moment saying, why is everything feeling so different? Why am I not picking up this guy running behind me? I always know there were so many skills that I had developed, or I would say sensations and feelings that I didn't know that existed, but I'd shut off because that's what my brain was used to. So I think that high functioning brain from sport might have been a massive advantage. It also took me away from those issues that I might have actually faced when I was young, into because I was playing sport. There was a place for me to burn out all that excess energy. So I'd come home and just sleep. And it was very, very prominent then. Apart from because it was stimulant, started having a lot of soft tissue issues, later on injuries,
Yes.
because it was
Yeah.
dehydrating as well.
Dehydration. Yeah.
People don't know. So,
Yeah.
and I know that a lot of athletes out there might be prescribed this and then must be facing it, but may not be putting two and two together as well. And
Well,
this is
yeah.
a big scenario there from a dehydration standpoint as well.
Yes. Yes.
So it's been from then to now, it's been quite a eye opener. It's also been hard to for me to now sit and talk about this, even in a public forum. It's I think a lot of prejudices that exist between what people talk about these, need to deal with these things as well. But I think I was also older, so I kind of managed it better. But I don't know if I think about the same scenario for a younger athlete. I don't know how that would be, how harmful that would be, especially from my backgrounds, where I don't think people are still very open to these things in India. The big cities may be okay, but it's a very different scenario. People look at it as an illness rather than having to learn to deal with what you're given, and it's not really. You just need a different medium to understanding your brain and
Correct.
learning as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Abs, I've got a quick. Sorry, go on.
No, go on, Stel.
Sure. Well, it's just related to what you said earlier about the hyper focus and how it helps you get things done. Now, I mean, I don't know how long you've been getting into that hyper focused zone, so to speak, but did that ever affect your social life? Because I'm taking it from my experience, because that's the only way I can explain it. When I'm in that fully focused, locked in zone where I'm working flat out, whether it be on a project or something like a spreadsheet, nothing else matters. I block everything else out. So even if it means spending 10 minutes on my daughter, I'm like, look, sorry, I need to get this done. Did that affect your social behavior in that respect?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely did. Sometimes I think I would close down or create a space for me to actually, because I needed that kind of space to get things done. But I had not figured how to trigger it, and a lot of it was normally linked to what I learned from sport, and it needed a pressure as a trigger, was maybe a deadline, maybe something like that, for me to get into that hyper focused state. But obviously I didn't know this before, but now I've kind of built strategies on saying, okay, when I imagine I have a project, I also make sure my supervisors are give me hard deadlines, so that I want it to be a pressure in my head for me to get it done, but I need to create that environment, which probably for someone else saying, oh, okay, it's flexible, then I would just sit on it, because it's not because I don't want to do it and I don't know how to do it. It's just that it takes an extra effort to get that type of focus. But if I have things like this, so I've learned strategies like that. But again, when you talk about personal lives, I think I did. That was also the reason why I kind of got to a state where I realized I needed psychological consults or things like that. Was I wanted to investigate, saying why my relationships also had issues with them, because they were not able to understand where I came from, and I myself didn't know. It would be a burden on someone who I'm dating, because I wouldn't want to be in the same place as well most of the time. Travel, loved it. That's why when I was with teams, just loved going away. I love pre-seasons because then you go hammer and tongs and you focus. But
Like
then,
that.
yeah, I love that. If you tell me not to sleep for a week, probably I wouldn't have be happier,
Yeah.
because I want to get every single aspect done. But then you kind of disconnect from society, like you said, disconnect from friends, and and I still do that a lot. Like I know LT will be the first person to say that I'm not the best in keeping in touch as well as much, because I generally have gone into a mode where I realize a lot of the triggers like notifications and things like that started causing, because back home I used to run my own facility, and so all the clients were scheduled on calendars, right? And so it was all the time looking for messages to kind of reschedule and put things in place. So you're constantly checking your phone. And so when I did move here, I kind of took off all notifications, and I kind of just went off it a little bit so that and it really made a big difference to me. But it does impact the rest of it, because a lot of them maybe got used to you communicating as a lot more. Now suddenly they're like, oh, you don't care, so it can be an adverse thing, isn't it? Yeah.
What you just is great, Stel, what you said, but what you've just said there, Abs, I've done that for years. I've literally turned off the phone. I think the worst thing for me is a mobile telephone, because when I was growing up, it was like if you wanted to ring someone, you went to the phone box, and if you didn't have no money, you'd reverse the charges, speak to the operator. Hello, yeah, reverse charges. My mum would pick the phone up and they go, hello there, this is 242-947. Would you accept the charge from Lee? No, get your arse home. Bang. So, but what I'm trying to say is phones, notifications, straight away, I've spoke about two other subjects. I wait for what we're saying. That's where I go. But the notification thing, yeah, that's a distraction. Going back to what you were saying before that, I learned totally different to you. I still have to read something 20 times, but if you read it to me, it goes straight in. I don't have to validate myself for anyone in the world no more. I don't care. Are there kids with masters and PhDs that are coming through that are getting jobs before me, but have got no life experience, no job experience, and that's why there's so much turnover in staff in professional sport, because I haven't got the tickets, which I've got my tickets to be in the Premier League, but now they're changing the goalposts all the time. But I'm still in the game and I'm still at the top level. But I still can't. I'm not an academic, But if I'm in front of 30, as you know, Abs, we've got World Cup winners with us, and Marco Maserati, young captain Villa, Del Piero, Silvestri, I could go on for days. Freddie Lundberg, Robert Perez, everyone who's over there with us, and they go one of the best strength conditioning and high performance operators. In fact, yourself, me, and linking up with you, then surely we're doing something right still. I'm going off tangent here, but that's, again, this is what the podcast is about. It's just showing awareness to people how we think and what we do. But you look at people like Alan Sugar and Richard Branson and the guy owns Amazon. They're dyslexic. They're neurodiverse, and they learn differently. But that doesn't make them or us any different to anyone else. We just do things differently. However, society and sport, they want these tick boxes,
but Lee, isn't it? Look, sorry for interrupting, but I was reading somewhere that even if one of your senses is lowered, another one is heightened to kind of balance it out. Is that right? Or am I completely off base here?
Yeah, I can only speak for myself, but I would say I would say yes to that, because if someone reads me something, it goes straight in. If I watch something, it goes straight in. Pictures, they say a picture paints 1,000 words. If I see something or I listen to something, but I mean visual, but not text. Text for me is, oh, you know, it's like, oh, you know, your palpitations.
Yeah.
And like tests, if you got to fill something in, I'm there. If it's audio, it's great. Or if someone, it's audio, it's great. If someone's telling me it, it's great. But it's just the way I learn. And then when I coach, people say, I love you when you coach. I love you when you present and that, because I do it how I learn, and because half of the people out there that I'm coaching will be like me, but they won't have. They'll be scared to say something because
think about the
they
best player that you. What would you want in your best player if you're coaching on the field? Wouldn't you want the athlete to be able to assimilate everything that you show and put into practice? Everything that he sees, he'll have to assimilate and put into practice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's like a talent that I think is very essential to be successful in today's professional sport, isn't it? When a coach is speaking, but I think this also is a reason where I think a lot of athletes have these issues, but don't know when someone presents them with some literature to read about to do something, they're like, oh, this is just too much information going in, rather than if it's demoed, or if it's been shown in action. You do a drill and you show them a demo of the drill. A lot of these athletes actually pick it up, and I think they get filtered out.
They do.
Those are the only ones that they get filtered out, isn't it? And that's an essential skill of an athlete as well.
They do, and you've hit the nail on the head there, because even when, which is my worst nightmare, being in a classroom, even when I have to deliver a university to a group of 60 people, it's not a problem. But I won't do nothing on a PowerPoint or nothing like that. I will go and I'll take center stage, and I will give them all scenarios of, how about this when you've done something like this time, and I kind of act it out. And you've got them all the time, because they're not looking at a bit of paper. Obviously, we have to do the bit of paper bit, and you give them that, and it's old school handout, or all your bits and bobs. But it's just the way I learn. And every time that I deliver something to someone, I say, right, imagine you doing this, or have you done this before? Or don't just tell them, you go through it, and it's a visual, and I do it visually, audio and visually, and practically. That's how I learn, is get my hands on and delivering things. And I think a lot of places you go now, it's all PowerPoint, and people switch off, and they're afraid to go, I don't understand. And I always say to people, does everyone understand that? Do you want me to say it again? Or I'll go through the demo again, you know?
Yeah.
And it's a picture paints 1,000 words, you know? Let's go on, Stel.
I've got a question for both of you, actually, because obviously you guys have gone deep into this, but what would you say was the one moment that you guys felt most uncomfortable based on what you guys have been discussing about, you know, the neurodiversity, all the obstacles that you had? Was there one moment in your careers, I don't mean like personal, but in your careers, where you kind of froze, or there's something that you just didn't know how to get past that barrier?
I think there's things like that every day still. I don't think there's I don't, as I said to you, I spoke to you about this podcast to bring this out, because I'm going to put it out there, because I've done everything I can in my life, and I'm still doing well, you know, and we're still doing it. But I'm just trying. I don't have to validate no one else now, or validate myself to anyone anymore. And if someone doesn't want to employ me, or I'm doing something, I don't really care, because I know how I learn, and I want to give back now, and I want to. So the answer to your question, because I've digressed about 4 questions over, is every day still. Every day there is something where I go, if I don't do that, then he might think I'm thick. But I don't care no more. I just say, don't understand that. Can you tell me, or can you show me?
I would say a similar scenario, but again, like how LT said, I've also now had to break out of that saying, no, I just didn't get that. Can you probably put it in a different way for me? And I had to really learn and build that courage, because it's I don't know about how it was for you, LT, but for me, growing up in India, especially going to school, if you asked questions and if you ask stupid questions,
Same.
or
Yeah.
they would just think you're thick, and it's
Yeah.
so we're also, there's a lot of built up fear even now, and I couldn't believe at 40 now, going back, and I was like, I was really looking at it saying, how am I feeling this sense of insecurity and fear even now, and it can happen at any point, and I had to really break out of that by creating a scenario saying, you know what, I'm going to go in today, I'm just going to put my hand up every single moment that I feel, I'm just going to put it, let's see what happens, and I started it off with that. I think I've gotten to a place where I'm like, okay, it didn't feel odd, it didn't feel awkward. People understood, but again, just like LT said, I had to stop worrying about, oh, would people think I'm dumb? Would I, And so it definitely was hard, especially now being in the university, which is it's a quite the opposite scenario, like he says. I'm on board with what, especially what LT was saying about how. The practical part of it is really important, and a lot of them finish, and I think people jump in because now the pathway is to just finish your undergrad, masters, and you don't get anything, you do a PhD, whichever is the way, but that's generally how it is. But you don't realize that especially in this sport, in the sporting environment, you need to know, understand and feel the athlete, understand and feel the sport, especially when, say, when you're working in football. And I know, LT, you always, we both have spoken about this on match day -1, or when we're running the drills, we'll know whether we're going to win tomorrow or not. We just get the feeling, the sensation.
Yeah, you do.
We know who's backing, and even when we do the warm up on there, you'll know if that gay is going to go well or not. We just feel all of that, and all that comes with applied experience as well. But at that point, I've always seen a lot of these athletes where I've seen in a bunch of 10, maybe there'll be 2 of them there saying, oh, what did you say? Oh, what was that? But they didn't. And many a times it'll be those guys who will be like waiting for someone else to see him do it, and they'll be able to replicate, say they got away with it, but might become a big issue as they play higher, and it's that point where I've sometimes walked up to them saying, okay, do you want me to talk to you about it in a different way, and probably make an individual session? And that's how we kind of got through with these guys,
I got like one more thing, Stel. I got one more thing which I think is really relevant to finish up, and I'll get your thoughts on this, Stel, as well, because you've been in professional sport for God knows how many years. Well, what you do, as well as me and Abs, is how many times have you been delivering something to someone, or in someone's company, or working with them, and the person that's maybe the manager, say the manager, let's just say it's football club manager, and then there's us as the middle management, but we're like the go-between, the operators, and then we've got the players. How many times have you seen the manager disrespect players because they don't get it straight away, they don't understand, and they get the ump because they're not picking up what they're saying, because they don't understand how to interact and how to make what we would call a reasonable adjustment, which in professional sport is unheard of, because you either do it one way or you can go. It's one of them. You do it one way or you're thick. You do it one way or you're not listening to me. You do it one way or you're taking the piss out of me. So that it's changing attitudes and changing behaviour of senior management and some middle management operators. Their know-how to deal with players. I've had players, I can say one in particular, which I won't say his name. He probably played from Premier League. He would still be in the Premier League now. He was one of the most talented players I've ever seen in my life. It took him 3 months to talk to me. He never spoke to any of the other team. It took me 3 months for him to say hello to me. And then once he spoke to me, he thought, you understand me. He didn't leave me alone. And the kid was unbelievable. He's a man, but he was unbelievable, and he'd still be playing in the Premier League now. He was sensational. However, I know he's neurodiverse, and just like me, but it's that invisible still, you know. And there's so many players out there, and there's so many managers and middle managers and operators that don't understand how to deal with people. I know it's precious and you've got to tread careful, but sometimes this is where the PFA, the Lawn Tennis Association, I'm just saying, just for instance, these sorts of, like the rugby union, the cricket, you know, darts, everyone just get awareness for this. Because,
but Lee, do you know what it is? It all boils down to one thing, and it's communication. That's all it is. You know, there's nothing wrong.
To communicate. It's only
but this
their
is
way. It's their way.
There's
only their
there's
way.
no problem. There's no issue with sitting down at a table and saying to someone, right, what are your thoughts on this? I may have differing opinions, but we're not going to be ignorant and narrow-minded about it. We're going to sit down. We're going to come to a compromise. And this is why we have problems around the world with everything, because people don't want to compromise.
Yeah. But yeah, I know what you're saying, and you're spot on, because you've been in corporate, you've been at the top of your corporate ladder with what you do. However,
don't remind me.
However, probably the biggest company in the world that you worked for, the biggest company in the world. But what I'm trying to say is, and absolutely hear me on this one, and you will now, Stel, because you've experienced it in profession. It don't work like that in football. It don't work like that in sport. It's either that you've got someone here and it's their idea, and you're not going to go and sit on around a table with them. They're not bothered about that. They just go, tell the assistant manager to do something, tell the physio he's doing this, tell the strength conditioner he's doing this. That's what we want to change. And am I right? Am I wrong, Abs?
Absolutely no. Definitely, I think.
Tell me if I am. But that's just me. You know,
this is definitely an aspect of which needs to be integrated into every coaching aspects, or be it even communication between team personnel. It could mean just a change in the mode of communication, a change in the way certain things are delivered for certain players. But if you don't create a safe environment for these athletes to perform in, you know, how are you any different than, you know, a club which is a lower division or whatever? If you're talking about,
but imagine it doesn't matter if you're in the Premier League or you're in League Two or the Conference or the National League. Sorry, it doesn't matter. They're all footballers, but they're at different levels, right? But they're all human beings, and there's no difference between treating players and delivering and finding out. If you can imagine, if that person that I was talking about had a little bit more love, all right, and a little bit more understanding from the powers that be. He got it from us. Took a long time, but if he had it from them, they might have got another 1% out of that player and sold him for 40 million. And then that player would be the best player in the world, which I don't doubt he would have been, right? However, he was left to rot. And there's only so much I can do.
Here's a question then, because as you know, with most football, in fact, most sports associations now, clubs, etc., they have psychologists, but they have data analysts, then they have the people at the top that are the money men, and then you have the coaches, etc., etc. So again, it's back to communication. You might have a player that's not playing well, but the data analyst that perhaps recommended to bring him in is saying, well, his stats show that last season he did this, and this. But the psychologist is saying, well, he's got this and that issue. The coach is like, well, I don't know how to deal with it. So it's flicking to the under-19s. And the money men at the top, they're like, well, we spent 20 million on this lad. He's on 100 grand a week. Well, what are we doing with him? And then you got his agent. And then you got his agent. So
this is my point. This is my point.
Yeah.
It's my point. And this is why, that's why I rang you, Stel, to do this podcast and reach out to people.
If you think about us being providing athlete care, it doesn't probably end with just physicalities, right? We obviously have psychologists working with them, but sometimes there's such a big gap between or a negative thing attached to psychology and how much of that can flow from an athlete to the coaching staff, and what do they do with that information? Because I don't think the implementation of that is that easy, because there are many things that cannot be directly shared with the coaching staff as well. But I think there has to be a medium in which they can take that information and safely implement it. I think that awareness needs to be built up a little bit more.
I think in proper terms, you've just said it perfectly. I say it emotionally because this means so much to me, this subject, because I've suffered all my career hiding something and trying to masquerade. And I'm not an academic. I'm not. I'm a very, very good at what I do. I'm a good coach. I'm a good therapist, and I do very, very well, because I wouldn't get the jobs I did if I didn't, but I'd get so much more if I was an academic, which is really, really sad, so so this is why we need to do this still, because it's raising awareness but I will say, just lastly, what your two thoughts are on this. You can only help someone if they want to be helped, and they've got to trust you, So it took me 3 months to get that kid's trust. Well, he's a man, that man's trust, to even speak to me. One sentence.
Yeah.
And that's all it was. Yeah.
Relationship building comes from personality, and having a personality and character that resonates with another person. But yeah.
And
so
I think at this point, with this same topic, if I may share one thing I observed, because me and Lee LT met at the ISL, like I said, the Premier League in or the top division in. So he was working with Northeast United at that point, and the kids in the Northeast are incredible athletes. Like, they have a lot of tribal genes. They're the most. I would love to do a study with those guys there to try and understand because they're incredible athletes, but because of the backgrounds that they come from, even in India, they're very discriminated as well, because they don't look like other Indians as well. They're very discriminated. Right. But they're good. Football runs in their blood. They love football to death. And so they love playing football. You'll see them everywhere. In all the football teams, you'll always see a kid from the Northeast. But they're so shy, and they sometimes don't speak English. But what I saw was, I think it was LT's birthday, and these young boys from the team had come and given him a pair of shoes as a gift, and I think, and it says a lot about how LT deals with people, and because even for someone like me being from there, it's really hard to get a buy-in from them, because they're just closed with how. But if you went, because I know of what you did for them, and they realized new levels of performance, and and it was a club that was struggling internally a lot. In that scenario, I saw many of those players actually show so much of love for LT. So I think, again, coming back to what you said, that if you have that relationship with that players, it takes time to build that connect. And when they see genuine effort, they actually players always respond to it. They know that you're genuine. They will respond to these things.
My Hindi weren't that bad. Ek do din cha. Jaldi. Chalo.
he's got all the terms there set for saying 1, 3, 4, get in, get out.
Yeah. Hey, Cello, quicker, Jeldy, hurry up. Yeah.
That was a lovely
brilliant,
moment.
brilliant. But that goes a long way with them, doesn't it? But anyway, Stel, I'll let you round it up.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's one more thing. I think it would be amiss not to mention this. Abs, you know, you're the co-founder of the Outperform Lab. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about that before we wrap it up?
Oh, well, it's a performance center that I used to have back home, but currently it's a facility which I've had it for a long time. It was a center that I started for myself because I used to live half an hour away from the city center. So my cricket stadium was in the city center. I didn't want to go all the way back, so I rented a space in a basement where I built a gym for myself, for me to train, eat, and sleep, and then go back home a little later on.
Efficiency.
Yeah. Then it evolved into, so like I said, I was fixing myself all the time, and I had people walk in saying, "Oh, how did you do this?" Because they were struggling with same injuries, and I never thought at that point I would actually enjoy doing it for someone else, and that was the first step. And I started helping people, and I really enjoyed that process. And because I went about saying, "Oh, this worked for me, why is it not working for him?" And that was the first step of exploring how the same principles can be used for someone else, and I really enjoyed it. And that became a center for strength and conditioning, rehab, physiology work that we did for a lot of runners, a lot of athletes. A lot of them, I had a lot of clinical clients there. I also had a climbing wall in there because I had the Indian team climbing was my close mate as well. So I had a climbing wall in there. So I had a climbing community come in there. So when I did leave home, I actually gave that whole facility to the people who are running it, because the people are the ones who made that place what it is. So I kind of handed it off to them. A lot of my interns who've been working with me for a long time, they run the place. So it still exists, but it's I just use that whenever I go back now. But mostly I kind of use it, kind of connect with people in terms of staffing and things like that within football teams there. But I play a very small role now with it, but it's mostly run by everyone else back home. When I go back, maybe I'll just go back and continue with that work. But it's mostly right now just trying to figure out my PhD, and I'm trying to do
all right
physiology work now.
More PhD.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. You're starting off there with the academic stuff.
Turn it off. Turn it off. Get me a gym and a bit of grass anytime.
Happy days.
Brilliant, boys.
Well, Ash, thank you so much for joining us and being our first guest on this project of ours. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we can do this again sometime. Lee, any final thoughts, my friend?
Listen, I'm tingling because it's something that we've wanted to do for
Careful.
such a long time. And no, it's really a big thing, this. And and Abs, thanks for, I mean, you're one of my very, very bestest friends, and I'm just saying, I never knew that about you. You never knew this about me, but I really appreciate you coming on for me and Stel on the Invisible Silence today, and sharing an hour with us. We've had an hour, and thank you. That's all I can say. Thanks very much. It's been great.
Yes, it's been an honor. Thank you so much.
All right, but we'll see you soon. Stel, sign us off. And
no worries. That's it. We're done. Till the next time. Be safe.